Basically, what we're going to be talking about today is Neil and I were talking about how we always feel like anime, manga, a lot of media from Japan, not Japanese, Japan, has really good characters and they build them really well compared to some of the like America, kind of the things that we have here, various novels. And so we wanted to go over a video because we actually found a video that actually talks about why they have good, maybe like plot structure, why the characters are almost better, and why it's down to almost the science over there. So we're going to be doing a reaction to that. But I don't know, Neil, you got anything you want to say before we get
No,
into
let's,
it?
let's do it.
Okay, sweet.
Consists of four Japanese characters: Ki, Sho, Ten, and Ketsu.
Okay, I think I want to stop it right there, actually. I kind of want to look at that plot structure. So I think that's actually kind of an interesting way that they have it laid out. Because if I'm correct, so when we have art, did you ever like in English class go over like the writing structure?
Are you
Of
talking
like
about like
it's like
rising
the
action, climax,
yes,
what that stuff? Yeah.
yes. So I don't know exactly how that chart goes, but to me this one's actually really interesting because it's like it's a looping, it's just kind of like bump, 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 and then it goes way down. So that was one thing I wanted to just like bring up that when I originally saw this video, I thought was interesting because ours is very like up, straight, and down, or maybe it's like up. I can't remember exactly how it goes, but it's almost like this to me. If you look at this from like a Western perspective, that it has like multiple rising and falling actions, then like a really big one.
Yeah, they talk about usually how there's something bad. I can't remember what the word is, but like the lowest moment right before like the climax.
Yes,
And
yeah.
that happens a lot in Western media. But it's not necessarily throughout. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. I couldn't quite remember, but that was one thing that when I was seeing this, I was like, oh, that's a weird image. But anyway, let's continue. We didn't even make
Yeah.
this far.
Ketsu consists of four Japanese characters: Ki, Sho, Ten, and Ketsu. Each of these characters represents one of the four parts of the narrative structure. This plot structure is unique in the sense that it does not rely on conflict or resolution. This is very different than Western plot structures like the hero's journey, the three-act structure,
Hmm.
Freytag's pyramid,
Oh,
and
right
Dan
there.
Harmon's
That's what
story
it was.
circle.
It's like, where was it?
Structures like the hero's journey, the three-act structure,
Is it that?
Yep.
No.
Yep.
Freytag's pyramid,
Oh,
and
was it? Okay, yeah, that was it right there.
Dan Harmon's story
Okay.
circle. Instead, it emphasizes the development of characters and their relationships, as well as the setting and the mood. In today's video, we will explore the four parts of Kisho Tenketsu and discuss why Japanese mangaka have relied on this story structure for centuries. But first, let's hear a word from today's sponsor. This
Okay, I'm
video
gonna skip real quick. If you have anything to say it now while I skip this ad.
I mean, yep. Nice
Skillshare.
for this dude getting the sponsorship money.
Right? Okay, here we go. This should be it.
Kisho Tenketsu is the name of a traditional narrative structure used in Japanese literature. It is particularly used in poetry and drama, but has been widely utilized by Japanese manga artists. It is sometimes described as a narrative structure devoid of conflict. This defining trait sets it apart from Western story structures.
Okay, so I have a couple things I want to say that I thought was so when the intro he's saying it was based off a lot of like mood and setting. And that is really interesting to me because I think if anyone's watched anime or any manga, that mood and setting are really important. I mean, that's at least, I mean, the ones I've watched, I feel like the mood and the setting have a lot to do with it, as well as like the character journey. I mean, that's actually really interesting because they said there's not even a lot of conflict. It kind of almost steps away from conflict. Ah, that's interesting because I feel like,
Yeah.
huh,
I mean, conflict is usually like authors will talk about explicitly adding it to your outline
hmm
and like there's conflict between characters or some sort of like tension between the main character's goal and where they are currently and how they're trying to bridge that, and that's like what drives the story. So it's definitely like
yeah,
from the ground up like a different take. And I think you kind of see
hmm
that in anime.
yeah. I was
Um,
gonna say because I feel like almost we're taught, at least I was when I was going in like high school, that you have to have plot or else your story is almost worthless. Kind of like there needs to be, you need to know kind of already before you even sit down and write what the conflict is. And to me, so it almost feels like to me the way they write these like anime, like the Kisho Tenketsu, it seems like it's almost like the hero's journey, but you're just going on a journey as this character develops, and that seems like the whole plot structure is it doesn't really matter. Like it almost feels like this would be really conducive to use for people that just are not outliners but are pantsers. I feel like this would be like a really good method because you're almost just doing twist after twist and you're just spitballing it kind of feels like to me. I think that's I wonder if that's what they do. I'd like to know if that's what they do. They just like spitball their ideas. Maybe that's how One Piece is
Yeah.
still going.
Well, like Naruto is an interesting example because in the very
hmm
beginning, like his goal is to be the Hokage, and so that's like
hmm
kind of like a conflict, but it's not
Yeah.
really the real thing. Like there's so much
No.
that happens, and he progresses throughout the show, and like it's all these like little things that keep you engaged. It's not that you're super worried about him becoming Hokage. That's just sort of the
hmm
intro and the setting. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, it just allows for infinite story and twists and turns, like you're saying. So I don't know.
Yeah, because
Let's
no,
see.
I agree with that 100%.
What I mean by this is in traditional Western stories, it will usually begin by introducing conflict and building towards a climax. In Kishu Tenketsu, the story builds towards its major twist. This plot structure originates from China. It then moved to Korea. Eventually, this plot structure made its way to Japan and became known as Kishu Tenketsu. Kishu Tenketsu is used throughout Japanese literature, including traditional manga, yonkama manga, movies, plays, music, novels, and light novels. The concept has also been used in game design. Shigeru Miyamoto has stated that he used Kishu Tenketsu when designing Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario 3D World. Japanese authors use Kishu Tenketsu for a variety of
I
reasons.
haven't played any of those games. Have you played any of those games?
No,
Okay.
I didn't play the Mario ones.
Neither did I. All right, we're moving on.
One reason is that this plot structure emphasizes the holistic and nonlinear approach to storytelling. Unlike Western narrative structures, which often rely on a conflict resolution model, Kishu Tenketsu allows for more nuanced character development and exploration of themes. The story emphasizes the importance of the setting, the atmosphere, and the emotional impact of the story, rather than just the plot. Kishu Tenketsu is also deeply rooted in Japanese culture and aesthetics. The structure is influenced by traditional Japanese arts like poetry, calligraphy, and painting, which highlight the beauty and subtlety of simplicity, balance, and harmony. It also offers a unique challenge and opportunity for writers to experiment with new possibilities in storytelling. By deviating from Western narrative norms, non Japanese writers can create fresh and surprising stories that defy audience expectations and challenge conventional storytelling techniques. Let's take a look at the four-act plot structure. Kishitzen.
So it's like really rooted in the culture. That's like kind of what I'm getting out of this is like it's been around for a long time. That's and these in poetry, that's kind of like interesting to me. Like I feel like that'd be even in like the plays, that's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah.
Huh.
What I thought of is uh, I recently watched Ghost in the Shell, um,
Oh,
which is
yes,
like a
yes. I love
90s sci-fi Japanese
I do
movie,
like Ghost in the Shell. That's a good one.
and it doesn't have a super compelling plot. A lot
No,
of
not
it
really,
is
no.
atmospheric, like super cool
hmm
sounds, cool like cinematography. Like there's a whole scene that's just like sound and cinematography for like 5 minutes. Nobody's even
Which
talking. It's
scene
just
is it? Which one are you talking about? Which one?
it's like halfway through and it's just scenes of the city, like rain and boats and
Okay.
people walking.
Okay, yeah.
And so that type of stuff, like I can see why they put that more in. And also the show is just exploring a theme of
hmm
like what is it to be human, what is a spirit, what is consciousness. Um,
Mm.
and it's less about the plot. The plot's very secondary, um, especially in the earlier part, which is like all this development. And I think that's
hmm
something that I've noticed with anime in general is they explore themes more deeply than traditional Western media. Um,
Oh yeah, I would
so,
agree.
and I think that's sort of the point is like it's more about exploring like a theme than it is about a specific plot moving forward. Uh,
Yeah, no, I actually watched them back to back. Once I did the anime with the movie that came out with like I think Scarlett Johansson. And it's so interesting how different they are to me. Like they're way
oh,
different. It's they're not bad. I like both of them, but they're just different. Because like you said, the Japanese one is very atmospheric, and the plot is really secondary. Like to me, the Ghost in the Shell anime really feels like there's no really a conclusion. Not in the sense that I'm used to or was taught, where all the threads kind of tie nicely back up. It's almost an ambiguous ending of, the bad guy sort of gets killed, but is he really the bad guy? And does he move on to another body? But in the movie that came out that Hollywood made, it's very plot driven, and the bad guy is like really central. Like her kind of figuring out her identity is on side. It's on the side. Maybe it's kind of the mainstream still, but the dealing with the bad guy is actually a lot more important, which I was really shocked.
Hmm.
And they actually changed it up. Like she actually didn't know what had happened to her as much, and they lied to her. So I think it's like there's that watching those two side to side kind of helped me understand the difference of what entertains in what part of the world. Where in Japan, that one's very much more entertaining, whereas in America, we have more of that Western. We want that rising action, the big problem, and then the conclusion. So I'm glad you brought Ghost in the Shell up because, yeah, that's actually a really good example of this.
Tenketsu can be broken down into 4 parts. Key, the introduction stage. This is the beginning of the story where the setting and characters are introduced. The reader is introduced to your story's world and given information to understand your plot. Show, the development stage. This is when the story begins to unfold and the plot thickens. There may be complications or conflicts introduced in this section. 10. The twist stage. This is when there is a sudden change in direction or a surprise revelation. This is the climax in Akisha Tenketsu's story. Ketsu, the conclusion stage. This is when the story is resolved. This section may provide closure, offer reflection or commentary on the events of the story, or leave the audience with a sense of ambiguity. An example of Kisha Tenketsu can be seen in Makoto Shinkai's movie Your Name. The movie begins by introducing 2 characters, Taki Tachibana, a teenage boy from Tokyo, and Mitsuha Miyamizu, a teenage girl who lives with her grandmother and little sister in the countryside. It is quickly established that Taki and Mitsuha have never met before. The 2 of them inexplicably begin changing bodies without warning, forcing them to live out each other's lives. To manage the situation, they leave notes to instruct the other on their daily life activities. Eventually, they get to understand each other better through their friends, family, and coworkers. The plot revolves around this mystery and building up their relationship until one day the body swapping stops. Realizing that he has feelings for Mitsuha, Taki journeys to find her. He discovers that the girl he had been switching bodies with had died in a natural disaster that happened 2 years prior to the story. Taki finds a way to swap bodies with Mitsuha one last time to alert the townspeople about the upcoming disaster. As a result, they are able to avoid the tragedy. The story resolves with Taki returning to his original body and bumping into Mitsuha years later. If there is one thing that I want you to take away from this video, it is to consider using Kishu Tenketsu with your own stories, especially if you are not Japanese. Personally, I have always thought Japanese anime and K-dramas were better written than most Western films. This is because Eastern media places less focus on conflict and focuses more on writing interesting characters. If you are an aspiring comic artist, manga artist, or webtoon artist, then looking into Kishu Tenketsu might be beneficial for you. With that being said, I hope you were able to get some value out of this video. If you did, please make sure to leave this video a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. Leave a comment down below telling us about your favorite Japanese.
Okay.
Well, go subscribe to this person, first of all, for making this video. Uh,
Wow, and I couldn't find many other videos on this, to be honest. So perks to you.
yeah,
Monitor Comics, perks to you. This was a
yeah.
solid video, so thank you for making it. You need to make more stuff like this. Thank you. But wow,
My
yeah.
my reaction is, I think it's absolutely true, especially the past like 10 years, that
Mm.
K-dramas and anime are more well written than Western media, like hands down. The
Oh
plots
yeah.
are so good, they're so interesting. Doesn't mean there's not some good Western ones, but on average, the quality is super good.
Well, it's
So
crazy
this is
too
a
because
good
it's almost
articulation of why that is.
yeah. Well, to me, the thing that I've always thought was crazy is just how much of the science it is. Like even the bad ones are still pretty decent, like with character development. That's the thing that I thought was always crazy to me is God, some of the animes that I've watched. Like, there's been a long list that I've watched, but some of them have had less character. I think like Dragon Ball Z has like okay character development, but still compared to a lot of like bad, like if I had to compare like that as being bad, which I really like Dragon Ball Z, so I don't think it's bad, compared to like you know, a popular book in America, or one that maybe falls short on character development in America, it's still they're light years ahead with how deep they get into these characters. I mean, sometimes I don't even know how they think of it, like the issues, the problems. I mean, that's like the manga of Vagabond. It's a Musashi manga, but it's like all he's doing is basically training, thinking about sword fighting and fighting. And the fighting is very small, how much it's actually in it. And so to me as a writer, I feel like that'd be something really hard to write about. Or even those like isekais where it's like transport to a different world, or the slice of life ones. Like all these would be so hard to write to me because what's the interest? Like if you look at it from a Western like plot style, I'm like, how do you even write these? Like,
I was gonna say slice of life like doesn't even really exist in like American media. Maybe the closest thing is like sitcoms where the situation never
mm,
changes and it's just supposed to
yeah,
be sort of these people's lives and it's funny, but slice of life it does it even better. Like it gets like
yeah.
into like you sort of experience them and you really like feel like you're in their shoes and these like really basic things about their day.
Mhm.
Um, you sort of become a part of that. And so and it's a good example of it. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of the other thing I was gonna say as a reaction. I can't remember. I'll let you react and I'll try and get my train of thought.
No, I think the sitcom's about the closest you can get. But my thing is that the slice of life that I feel like really portrays the Kisho Tenketsu really well is that there's still twists, there's still problems, and in a way you could even say there's kind of like the rising and falling action because problems happen. It's not like they're devoid of problems, or there's not like there is problems, but it's different than sitcoms. I feel like sitcoms, the whole point is to be funny, where slice of life's not necessarily having to be funny, right?
Sometimes they're depressing.
Yeah, it's just like it's just
Yeah.
a life story. And we don't have anything like that where we just, at least I don't think so. If anyone knows, comment on slice of life that we have in like Western media, because I can't think of a single one. Like sitcoms, the closest I can think of. But even those have kind
It,
of gone out, I feel like, in recent years. Like, I mean, because I
they
used to watch
have.
like Frasier, like Friends, Everybody Loves Raymond, all those like King of Queens, but there's not really a ton of sitcoms anymore, which I think is crazy.
Yeah. It's definitely not a thing. Um, yeah. Well, so one of the things I remembered is like modern Western media, I feel like it started going down a bad route with like these crazy action movies that have a lot of star power. So it's
Okay.
like Avengers is the classic one that people think made things bad, and then like the Fast and the Furious movies, like I liked them when I was like 15, and I still it's a guilty pleasure. Like I appreciate that part of media, but I think when you can get away with a couple interesting people and really crazy special effects, like your plot and writing just don't matter as much. And so that is kind of like where things gravitate towards. So I think people realized that they could do that. They didn't need to do the writing.
That makes
Um,
sense.
and then the other thing too that's interesting is at the end of the video, he talks about how there's like a twist at the end, and that's the conclusion.
Hmm.
And it's true, a lot of animes have crazy twists or like pretty crazy
Yeah.
revelations. And
Yeah, that's true.
a
Yeah.
lot of Western shows don't do that. It's more like you kind of know what's going to happen and you're waiting to see it, right? Some
Yeah, there's
do, and I think
foreshadowing. Yeah. Hmm.
the well-written ones do have twists, of course, but it's less common. Or I think the prevalence of some reveal in anime is a lot
Yeah.
bigger.
Yeah.
And why not? Yeah.
No, totally agree. Um I think the problem is in a lot of media we do too much foreshadowing. I think Japanese doesn't do the Japanese media does a lot less foreshadowing. I mean, I think in America it's like basically the shows I watch, things that end up happening are the twists are someone dies, someone kisses someone, someone's your sister, Star Wars, or your dad dad. You learn about your genealogy, I guess. Um, those are like the big twists. I don't feel like, I feel like dying, like people getting killed is like the huge trope with Western. I mean, every media does it, but I feel like that's kind of our, we kind of completed the character arc. We don't know what to do with them anymore. I mean, even like medical dramas will have this where, oh, you know what, we'll just get like, they'll get shot or like they'll get hit by a car. Kind of like in Friends, how like Joey like falls down the elevator and like his like whatever, and he's the doctor and he dies because he needs. It's like it's actually like a true trope. Like if you need to get rid of a character, just kill him. But I think, yeah, there's a lot of anime. I think like I like Dragon Ball Z. That has like some are pretty predictable, but that's a lot of twists. I'm trying to think of one that I watched that. Oh, Gundam Seed. Gundam Seed is actually, I know it gets dissed on a lot in America. I know a lot of people don't like Gundam Seed, but I was actually shocked because I think another problem is a lot of Western mindset towards animes that's for kids. I think that's a huge thing. It's very kid centric. Oh, look, it's cartoons, but my heck, I was watching. I'm like, dude, people are getting like killed left and right, and just some like the mature themes and like like scenes going on. I was like, because it says TVMA on like Netflix. I was like, please, please, like for what? Like I don't know. Sometimes I feel like they're a little too generous. Like the MA, like right, what is there like a little bit of like someone get blood or like someone say a few swear words? But no, I was like, oh, this is actually pretty dark. Like, and like you even said, some of the slice of life is pretty depressing just dealing with it. So, and it's all
I
because of
mean,
character twists.
you heard like the original Yu-Gi-Oh uh
Yes.
was like a lot more intense, and then it got turned into something kid-friendly, ported over to the
Yeah.
US.
Well, I have the
Um,
manga. Like I have the Yu-Gi-Oh manga, and even the English manga is a lot different than the English anime, but I think Hulu somewhere had the Yu-Gi-Oh that was in Japanese and like the anime I started watching is like, oh, like translation was way off on this. Like this is like a whole different show. Like Yami Yugi is kind of like this dark, kind of almost evil guy, and I was like, oh my gosh, like Yu-Gi-Oh got totally like changed. It was crazy to me. I was because I watched it as a kid all the time, and it was super kid friendly. Like, so I was shocked with that one. Yeah, that's a great example of one too. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like this yeah, the characters are so good in a lot of the animes.
Hmm.
Like I am biased maybe, but I think Naruto is one of the best character ensembles where
Mm.
there's so many characters by the end of Shippuden that
Hmm.
and you care about all of them. They're all interesting. You've had them the entire show. It's literally a cast of like 30, 40 characters that all they don't
Yeah.
feel that minor. Like they all are interesting. All of them have been explored. Um, so and
Yeah.
it's yeah, they've
Hmm.
had like plot points, but and like some enemies over time, and then some enemies become friends. It's like nothing
Yeah.
really matters until like the final,
Hmm.
fight happens. But you really enjoy
Yeah.
it for the characters. I think what's spot on what you said that you get sad and like they feel dark because of the characters.
Hmm.
Um, and anime is like really good at that, where it gives you some emotion for something and like can feel
Hmm.
really dark, even though maybe the content might not be super dark. Whereas I feel like US media does dark, shocking things in more of an extreme way, like Black
Hmm.
Mirror or something, where it just explores like a crazy idea and it's not like about the characters.
That makes sense. Yeah. I think one thing that one author said that I really liked is that he tries to avoid doing things for shock factor. So like killing someone just because I want to shock the audience and grip them. I'm like, oh, I feel like that's a trope that we do suffer from is that you've written the book or directed the movie or the TV show and you're like, huh, we're kind of hitting a rut. Let's just kill someone or we're going to do something shocking because I feel like that's what I liked about like because Naruto's a great example. I've only seen the first, I haven't seen any of Shippuden, but and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like Naruto is basically like they're going to do their mission, doing their mission, and then going back from their mission, and that's like a whole season, and it's one mission, but they're covering all sorts of stuff and relationship backstory. And I like that a lot. I mean, I feel like some people kind of like, I know Naruto suffers from some filler. I've heard that there's maybe too
I
much
just skipped
filler.
the filler. I didn't even
I
watch it.
I've heard there's filler, but I mean, even still, I mean, to me, that's just interesting how they're able to like we're going on our mission, but you're able to intertwine all these other plot lines, but still keep focus on a mission. So there is a plot. I would have to say, I feel like they always have a plot, but it's the journey to get to that plot is so entangled with everything that by the time they get there, you're like, wow, I really feel for Sasuke. Like, wow, I can understand Sakura. I mean, even Naruto. Like, I like Naruto. He's my favorite because I don't know. He's like the underdog. I always root for underdogs. Anyone's the underdog, and I like that about that show because that like those three were a super interesting dynamic to me. Like, I don't really feel like you saw that before where you had kind of like a guy, like you have the good guy, the bad guy, and then this love interest. I mean, I've seen love triangles before, but it's not really a love triangle because she just wants Sasuke. He doesn't want her. So it's kind of like a ladder of like, I want you and he wants you. But yeah,
The
I think
other
Naruto's great.
the classic thing Naruto does is every single bad guy that they defeat, you have to have like 1 to 3 episodes where it does flashbacks of the bad guy's entire life story and then
Oh, yeah.
explains why they
Yes.
became bad. And then when
Yeah.
they finally die or whatever, then you feel like a little bit conflicted.
It's no,
That's a Naruto
that's
classic, but I kind of love it.
But that's the thing to me is they don't Naruto doesn't suffer from being over detailed and like burdening you with too much. But yet they explain, like you just said, they explore every character, even the bad guys. You get a backstory on like everybody. I mean, if you were to do that in a novel, people would probably get sick of you. They'd be like, how much information do I need? But somehow in anime, it's so, and even manga, it's like, how? I want to know how they do without overburdening you with just like loads of information because somehow it's all relevant, right? Like you're listening, you're watching, reading, you're like, oh, this is it's all tying into this battle, and now you know this guy's motives, and it just makes it all the better. I mean, that's like the one thing that other anime that I watch, I feel like suffers from sometimes is they don't necessarily have a strong, compelling reason for the bad guy. Like I think Demon Slayer. I really like Demon Slayer, but you don't ever really get a ton of info unless I missed it and I'm dumb on like the bad guy and kind of why he's doing what he's doing. I could have just missed it. I have watched Demon Slayer pretty haphazardly altogether, but I think there's a couple that I feel you just made like the A+ example. You just did S tier with Naruto. You just threw that right up there, didn't you?
I think what helps with some of these animes is just how long they are too. Like Naruto went on for a really
That's
long time,
that's
so
true.
by the end of it, they'll have explored a lot. And but book series struggle. They can't really do the same thing, and
Hmm.
it's almost like a serialized format seems like it makes it easier. Um,
Mm.
because in novels, like even doing flashbacks is a little weird. And like I think about, like Steven Erickson's books as like an example of a really long series, right? It's like 10,000 pages. And that series does have some background and like the characters develop and change throughout, but it's still like that's a very unique book series that does that to an extreme degree, and it's still not the
Yeah.
same. Um, so yeah, it is different. One thing I was thinking about with Western media too is I think Western media is really good at like political, like interpersonal, really big twists. Like they
Mm.
do twists really well in those type of shows. Like examples like Succession.
I haven't seen
Um,
that one.
there's a bunch of other shows that are kind of like that, where it's like
Hmm.
business world dealings, politics, like secret
Mm.
world, like people. And
Okay.
that's like, I think those are shows that people love. And I think like the plots are crazy, right? And the characters are interesting.
Yeah.
But they
Okay.
very rarely do that outside of the context of like the real world. I think
That's
that's
true.
interesting. And it's always
That's
like
true.
super rich people, super competent people. It's never
Yeah.
like a like Parasite, the Korean movie. Like they
Mm.
don't do it for random people in the
Yeah.
US. That's not what's interesting. And maybe that's just a reflection of, I don't know, just the different cultures. Like the US is
Yeah.
more of a culture of like freedom, entrepreneurship, become rich, like
Yeah.
that type of thing. Whereas like Japan, for example, if you watch movies after their economy slowed down, like in the 90s, they talk about like it like permeates their media where the
Hmm.
sentiment of like we were more and now things have slowed down.
Yeah, that's
So
interesting.
it's really I almost wonder if that's what has pushed slice of life content more, is just
That
like
wouldn't
what the
surprise me.
people what the lives of the creators are, might have influenced that.
But that's the thing I think is really interesting is because I feel like it's easier to identify with if it's some random dude, right? I mean, they're still the main character of a story, but I mean, I feel like the best comparison would be like The Simpsons. To us is like Homer Simpson is just
That's true.
works at nuclear power plant, some random dude, but all this stuff happens to him, right? But I think that's cool because that has a huge reach for your audience. Because I think when you always do it with these super rich, wealthy, like business entrepreneurs, the problem is how many people can really, we don't really understand what they're going through. That's kind of like what I don't know, you could almost say that's kind of like the fantasy, the ideal dream of, oh yes, to have all these like a nice car to drive around and have all this money, but then all these problems happen. So it's almost like a fantasy of like what if versus like, oh yeah, like how you're saying like Parasite. It's just like you could be some random people sitting at a house, and then oh my gosh, like this spiral effect of things you uncover. And I think that has a huge outreach for people that I don't know. I guess like the majority of the population that is not rich, influential, and extremely
Yeah.
successful.
I think if Americans made Parasite, it would be all about the rich people in the same way, and you would discover the same weird twists, but it would be like from the perspective of other rich people in their
Yeah.
circle or something like that, and everybody would just be
Yeah.
evil. And
Yeah.
that's I
Probably.
think
Yeah.
that's sort of the take, is there's a lot of the popular shows are like exposing how secret and evil and crazy rich people are. And it's more
It's
of like
pretty
you
good
as the
point.
audience are just like observing that, and you're not seeing it
Mm,
through someone else's eyes that's not part of it as much.
yes.
Um,
No. I would agree with
so
that.
I might be generalizing a lot, but I
No, I
think
feel
that's
like that
usually how
makes
the
sense to
US does
me.
it.
I would agree with you on that. To me, it fits pretty well. Yeah, no, I would agree because like all the shows I can think of, it's always like influential, tends to be rich, unless it's like a medical drama, which I can't stand medical dramas for various reasons. But
I mean, even the doctors are like high flying, it's like they love, but I will say, look, Korean dramas have a bunch of medical dramas too. So I think everywhere doctor shows are just
yeah, doctor,
people like
yeah,
that stuff.
they just yeah, I don't know why, but yeah, medical. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think yeah, that'd be
Well,
interesting because I haven't seen many doctor shows and like I've seen Korean ones, but I wonder if they're like different in Japan. Because the only one I've watched is where the doctor goes back in time to the like before the Meiji Restoration happens, and he's doing like surgery on dudes with like farming tools.
oh my
But that's just more of
gosh.
like a cool show because it's like, what if you went back in time with all of your knowledge, but you had to work on like these samurai? But I do have to say, I think one because you were talking about politics in America, I think there's certain anime like I think Rurouni Kenshin does it well. Kind of during that Meiji Restoration and the Bakumatsu era in Japan when the samurai were falling out and the Meiji government was taking over. They do a lot of interesting politics with that. But after that era, I feel like it kind of dies out. Because even in like the Gundam shows, I feel like the politics are deep, but they don't have. It's once again, it's more about the characters than the politics. The politics is just kind of this overarching idea. So,
Yeah. I think with this video, something that I'm not totally sure I agree on
mhm.
is I think the Korean dramas are different from Japanese quite a
I would
lot.
agree. Way different to me.
I think they have less slice of life, actually. I think that's like more of a Japanese thing specifically.
Hmm.
Um, because I was thinking about it, and I was like, a lot of K-dramas actually do similar things as the US, where it's about like some, conglomerate CEO heir, or it's like a special
Yeah,
forces person or like a lawyer or whatever. So it's still like
true.
very status driven and
Mm.
like crazy rich people. Um, and I think that theme is more persistent than it is in Japan. And I wonder if it's a
Yeah, I
reflection
can
of
see
like
that.
greater inequality in Korea. Um, because you see that more. But it is true, I think that the Korean shows and the Japanese shows, the characters are better and more interesting. And there's a
Hmm.
lot of like moments between characters that they just set up so well, to make
Oh
you just be
yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh my gosh. And that's
yeah.
something that I'm like, that's like what good writing is.
Mm.
It's not special effects, right? It's good writing. And yeah, the US shows struggle a lot.
I
So
was gonna say, the two Korean, I never forget it. My first two Korean dramas was Mr. Sunshine and Itaewon Class. Have you seen either of those?
I've seen Itaewon Class.
You haven't seen
Yeah.
Mr. Sunshine, dude?
Yeah.
Oh, you want some top tier writing, dude? Oh, oh. It's long, it's like 28 episodes. By the end, I was like, oh, I can't go on. Like, I just need to be done. Like, because to me, that show was really funny because they have the princess. They have, and it's interesting because it's in Korea, and one Korean guy, I can't remember if he was taken by the Yakuza or Japan. He ends up kind of become like Japanese. He wears like the kimono. He wears like the daisho with like the big sword, like the katana and the wakizashi. And so he kind of becomes a samurai. The one dude goes to America, and it's like the what is his name, Lee Byung Hung or something. He's in the GI Joes. He's Storm Shadow,
I
the
don't
white,
know.
the night wind. Okay, never mind. And he goes to America, but then he comes back, and then there's just like this wealthy Korean. I mean, he's not a prince, but he's a wealthy noble, maybe. And they're all in love with like this one princess. And it's like I was thinking, oh, it's like a love square. I'm getting a love square Korean drama. Like this is gonna be interesting. Like who's gonna win? Because one of them, like the American and the Japanese Korean guys are just serious, and then the other guy, he's like a funny guy, right? But the way the show ends, like they had such a twist, and I was like, what? Like I thought like I had it panned out from the very get-go, but how it ends is insane. Like, and there's just twists the whole time and like assassinations, politics. That's actually I'd have to say that's like probably a 12 out of 10 Korean drama for me. Like the ending on that, yo, I'd recommend anyone who's watching this to watch Mr. Sunshine. It was a good one. Like I'm sad because I can't watch it again for the first time, if you know what I mean. Like the
Yeah.
experience is over, but no, I would agree. I think that's the only Korean show I can think of that necessarily doesn't have the trope of, like you were saying, like the rich people. I mean, there is still the rich noble guy, but the other two that, like the one is like an American military member, and the one that's from like went to Japan, they have status for sure. But it's interesting in the show because you see all of them lose that status at some point because
Mm.
of the like politics and how Korea is changing, which I thought was really interesting because you see how all of them deal with it differently and then how all of them differently try and recover. So I really I kind of combined some of your ideas together when I was thinking about like how you said in Japan they kind of went through the economic spike and then it went downhill. I feel like that show kind of goes through like real well character development of we're all interested in this princess, but we all had different lives. Some of us are angry for this and this. And also, the economy and how the changing of the country affected them. That's one thing I feel like books don't do very well is, because you can't really like do that where you have a character just living life and all these twists and change happen and you see how they kind of evolve because they're so plot driven, right? I mean, just plot 100%. But that show is really cool. I mean, you need to watch that. I can't. I don't know. I want to say much. I don't want to spoil it for you. Like if you actually do watch it, it's
I
Cinema
should. I want to
gold.
watch more.
Cinema gold,
Well,
man.
anyway, the writing in these shows is really good, and
Anyway, yeah.
this is an attempt to explore why, but
Yeah,
we'll
no,
wrap it up there. I think.
that'll be good. Okay, well, if you guys liked our video, give us a like. If you have any comments, feel free to comment below. Subscribe to us as well. It'd help us out, and we'd love to have some more feedback. So, thank you for watching.
Yeah. And our books we write are in the description, so check them out.
Indeed, yes, they are. Don't forget about
All
that.
right. See y'all.